Got two cameras going.
Nice, fancy.
Sure, the volume on this is all the way up. Check. Okay. I think we're set. Let me just check, make sure this feed is for real.
This feed for real?
Okay, we are looking good.
Awesome.
I can hear you. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
All right, welcome to Pod Brother Nation. Bevin, right? Bevin?
Yeah, nailed it.
It's such a cool name. I mean, I thought Kimbra was cool, but Bevin is cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, my parents, they thought I was going to be a boy, so I was a surprise girl. And the name I was going to have was Dominic, which means born on Sunday, but I was born on Sunday. So that part I did deliver on. But Bevin, it's a Gaelic name. It's Irish. And one of the meanings of it is victorious woman whose voice is so sweet, wild birds stop to listen. So, no pressure or anything.
Wow. Right out the bat, your name represents some serious, you got to fill your own shoes, and you haven't even grown
know.
up yet.
It would have been terrible if I was a bad singer, like really awful.
Well, lucky for you, you got the pipes as well as the
I'm working on
and talent and all the fun stuff. So I am super excited to have you on my show and just kind of go down a few rabbit holes with you.
Cool.
I met you in Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And, how long have you, first of all, how did you find Clubhouse? Because I'm always interested how people find it.
Yeah, at this point, how did I find Clubhouse? I think I follow Beth Stein Agency, actually. Stacy Solodkin. I don't know how to say her last name, but she runs Beth Stein Agency, and she kept posting about it, and I was like, what? I don't even know. Like, this was me late January. I was like, I have no idea what Clubhouse even is. I've never even heard of it. But then I started seeing other people like, oh, I'm in this room and it's really great. And I was just like, what room? Like, what are we talking about? And I had no idea. And then I said something like in my Instagram, like IG stories or something. I was like, can somebody tell me what the hell this is? Like, what is Clubhouse? And then one of my friends was like, oh yeah, I'm on it. I'll send you an invite. And I was like, I still don't know what it is, like, she was like, just, I don't even want to try to explain, just go and you'll see. And then she sent me an invite, and then I was like in all these rooms and connecting with all these people. And yeah, so I kept seeing it in people's stories, like talking about it, like, you should, this room is great and it's invite only. And I was just like, I have no idea what it is. But once I got in there, it was like kind of intense. I was like, I don't have the time to be messing with this right now, but it's actually really great. So I was like, okay, I need to set a timer and like hold a boundary, because there's a lot of really great conversations. I follow like a bunch of different actors and people in the industry. And then a few of my dance friends are like starting to come in to it. And I follow I'm in a bunch of astronomy clubs, and that is like a great way to spend like 15 hours. These people will have these discussions that go on forever. And I'm like, I have to work, but I don't want to leave because I'm learning so much right now. It's pretty cool.
It's like, they should call it Crack House.
They should call it Crack House. Like, it's not even a joke. It's really addicting. And I think everybody feels that way. Like, everybody that I talk to, they're like, oh my God, yeah, Clubhouse. I was on it for 7 hours. And I'm like, yeah, I believe you. I wouldn't have before I knew what it was, but
what you learn on there and the connections that you make are incredible.
Yeah. So totally awesome. It's really cool. Like, the access. I think the first room that I just like happened upon was like the guy that played Aladdin, Mina Masood, was having a conversation with another actor, I think a friend of his, about the pros and cons of going to going to school, going like getting a degree, you know, in theater or whatever, or just moving to LA and doing the thing. And it was like really, I'm kind of past that point in my own life, you know, but I was like, this is great. Like people were just asking them questions, and it really took down the like barrier, this like invisible wall between people who should be somewhere and people that don't have access. And it was cool. And everybody was chill in the room. It wasn't like any crazy fan people freaking out. So it was like really, really, I was like, I'm so excited to like learn from what this person has to say. Otherwise, I would never probably have that opportunity in this context, you know? So it was cool.
Well, I have found, because I joined, one of my industry professional hookups sent me a link to Variety VIP, which is hosted by Variety Magazine.
Cool.
And they have access to all the A-list studio executives and celebrities and managers and agents. And I mean, you'll go on to one of those panels and you'll have, you know, Spike Lee and Aaron Sorkin and,
Cool.
you know, just like all these A-list people, Brad Pitt, and you're sitting there, you're in the thing, you know, and it's just like, where in a million years would I ever get access to these people?
Yeah.
And, you know, never would have happened in non-pandemic world.
Right.
Never.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's so cool.
yeah, it's just amazing. I have, I have, I probably have a good 20 hookups off of Clubhouse right now. I mean, legitimate, serious, total, unbelievable, never would have got in a million years hookups.
That's so cool. Wow.
You know, I launched my, well, I've been in the drive-in movie theater business for a long time, but I've been mostly like crewing or selling or renting other people's screens and setting up other people's shows
Mhm.
and making other people a ton of money their outdoor movie nights. You know,
Yeah.
and $100, 150 for, you know, being on the crew. And I'm like, the first chance I get, I'm going to get me one of these bad boys. And I just recently bought a 40-footer. And
Cool.
whenever I go in these rooms, they're like, 40-foot outdoor theater guys. Like, I want to talk to you about getting my movie on your thing, or I want to talk to you about, you know, maybe how can we get a screen, or we want to rent your screen, or where can we buy? It's like, it's just been exploding, all the opportunities that, you know, are coming at me for
Cool.
this screen. And I met a location manager on there, Jason, and he's like, I could just reach out to like all my clients that own parking lots and open fields that we use for staging all the trailers and the trucks for these shoots that we're doing all over town. I was like, what? And
Perfect.
he has access to like all these parking lots. Now, you know, I've got access to probably 15, 20 lots. Some of them paved, some of them dirt in Los Angeles. I can do my movie nights at. And it would have taken me like 5 years to get those connections.
That's amazing. I keep saying to people, I'm like the future of like theater, like movie theaters, because I've been really, I mean, like we all are, like really trying to pay attention and really concerned for the future of like movie theaters, you know, just in the last year. Like, is this anything that's going to recover? And I was like, if we could just all agree that please can outdoor theater, like outdoor screenings, please be a thing again. Cause like drive-in movie theaters are dying. There's like one nearby where I live, and it's not even near, it's like an hour away. But like I will totally do it like as many times as I can in the summer to go, because there's something so magical about it. So like that's
Very
really
magical
cool.
about
Yeah.
being out in the sunset and the twilight. And,
Yeah.
you know, at the original drive-ins, you weren't allowed to bring in your own food because they want you to buy the concessions.
Right.
But for these pop-ups, you got food trucks out there. You can bring your own grill for some of these places and bring your own coolers. You know, there's no real, you know, restriction on, you know, what you can do with some of these, because it's a pop-up drive-in. So
Right.
it's not like it's an actual drive-in where they, you know, they basically want to gouge you on all their concession
Sure.
items, which I don't blame them. I mean, you know, if that's how you make your money, and you can sell caramel corn and sodas for $25, go for it.
Right.
That's Um, but I could not be more ecstatic right now than I am because my phone is ringing off the hook. I got the screen already booked through the entire summer.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, for two options, two municipalities. So if one I guess reneges, then I got to back up for another one.
That's so cool.
And we're talking through the whole summer.
That's
So
amazing.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Awesome.
So and these things aren't cheap to rent. You're like, I did my research.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna make a little bit of money this summer, and I'm due. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited.
Yay. That's amazing. I'm like really excited. That's super cool.
Yeah. And I'm also open to taking the screen on the road with me too. So there's a lot of events that I'm doing as far as my film festivals and comedy shows and podcasts. There's a lot of what I actually do as a producer, director, content creator that I can do with this screen to take on the road.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be looking for some local partners that have access to lots and open fields that I can roll in there and do a drive-in event, which would include, podcasts, comedy, live stream, movies, shorts, music videos, reels of different, actors that are actually in the movies that I'm screening. So if you want to hire them, you can see their reel. So
whoa, what a cool idea. Wait, hold up. Wait, rewind. That is cool. Actually, like a commercial break, but it's like the actors. Like,
yeah,
that's amazing.
It's like they're real. They're real are the commercial breaks.
That's insane. Why has no one thought of that? That's a great idea.
Because they're not me.
Because they're not you. There you go. All right. Well, the time is now. It's your time. That's amazing. That is like such a cool idea. Wow. I love it. Oh my gosh. I'm seriously excited for you right now.
Yeah. I mean, how cool would it be? I mean, I've gone to a ton of festivals and I get a lot of these ideas from going to other film festivals. Like I've been to the Cannes Film Festival probably 10 times. I've been to Toronto a couple times, Sundance like 6, the Marbella Film Festival at least a couple times in Marbella, Spain. And there's a ton of these like little, backyard LA festivals. I call them backyard LA festivals. They're really good and they're legit and they have great talent and they screen in great theaters and stuff. But because I'm in LA and there's a ton of them, I call them backyard film festivals because they're like in my backyard. But there's amazing, incredible films that are being submitted to these festivals from all over the world, and they're brilliant. And I sit in these theaters and I'm looking at some of these, series, especially the shorts. I love the short series because you've got like this hungry, fresh talent that's looking to show a sample of what they can do, hoping to get, a project finance or maybe get called in or called up to do a feature film.
Sure.
And you see one short after the next short after the next short after the next short, and I just sitting there, I'm just like, man, how cool would it be to have, like an actor's reel or a director's reel in between these shorts, and there's like maybe 10 of them. And so I thought, if ever I produce a film festival again, because I did a couple comedy film festivals when I was on the Queen Mary like a decade ago. But I'm like, if I ever get back in this game again, it's going to be with a drive-in movie theater, because there's no drive-in movie theater festival. So that alone is going to be a very kind of a soundbite for filmmakers out of the country.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to showcase the talent more. I'm gonna like do some demo reels of the director or the producer or the main actor or the sound guy or whatever. I think it would be cool to see like all the films the sound guy was in.
Yeah.
That these are unsung heroes, and being the sound guy and being the guy who's like in the background, and nobody even knows you or care about you or anything. I think it would be cool to see all the films the sound guy was involved with. So if you want to book a guy for a sound on your next film, it's like, okay, you kind of know what the guy looks like or the girl or whoever.
Yeah.
So
So
that,
cool.
that's what I'm doing.
That's amazing.
So you have your acting reel, right?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is it anywhere I can see it, or do you just send it out only to people who ask for it, or?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's like um I was editing it, so I made it made it unlisted like a few days ago because I was putting a new clip into it. My reel's been a whole saga this last year. It's been really interesting. But yeah, it is on YouTube. I'll make it public again once it's done in a couple of days. I just have to finish editing it, putting
Okay,
in.
but it's not up now though, right?
No, right now it's not up. Like this minute, it's not up. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to go to it and pull it into the show here, but I'll wait for it when you get
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's rewind the tape on you a little bit as far as how you got into the business and where you started your humble beginnings.
Yeah. My humble beginnings. I was just thinking about this the other day because somebody asked me, one of my friends we were talking about, they were like, why did you start, doing this? And I was like, well, the the short version of the story is, I mean, I started acting when I was 6. And I remember I was in not a great situation, in not a safe, good situation as a young child in an abusive environment. And I remember watching the movie. I might have been a little younger actually, but I was watching the movie Hook with Robin Williams, the retelling of Peter Pan, which is
Right.
like one of my favorite movies of all time. Like I love it so much. It's so nostalgic for me. But I remember watching the movie and it was, like I said, not a good time. And even remember kind of what was going on that day. It's all very vivid in my mind still. And I remember there's a scene in the movie where the Lost Boys, Peter Pan just did his like training montage, which I can like recite back and forth and sideways by memory forever and ever. And he comes like out of the shower or whatever, and he's like ready to eat. And he's like so excited to eat. And he smells all the food, and you see these pots and pans on this big banquet table, and all the Lost Boys are like, like smelling the food, and everything looks amazing. And then he sits down and he's like, God, I'm so tired. I'm so hungry. This is great. And then they take the lids off and there's nothing in there, and he was like, what Gandhi ate more than this, I think is the line, and he's like, what am I supposed to eat? And they're like, just eat, and they're like telling him, Peter, just eat the food. And he's like, there's nothing here. And there's this cute like interaction that goes on. And then finally something happens. I think Rufio challenges him or something, and they get in a little fight. And then all of a sudden he sees it, like his mind is open to the potential of what this banquet table could be, right? And it could be full of food if he would just let his mind like go there. And I remembered that moment, the moment that he flicks the spoonful of whatever puff cream, I don't know what delicious looking thing to me as a little kid, he flicks it onto Rufio's face. And it becomes real for him. And you see like that amazing Robin Williams moment, where you see the realization on his face, and then you're there with him. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot just now about everything sad going on in my life. Like I just completely forgot about it. I totally escaped, right? I was like a little lost boy. I was a lost girl, whatever, sitting at the table with all the boys and with Peter and like having this experience with them. And I was like, I just like immersed myself in this movie. Like, and then I realized, I was like, these kids are pretending to play pretend. And this is what they do. Like these little boys, this is their life. Like they do this. I could do this. Like, what if I could do this for some other kid? I have to do it. Like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell stories like this. And it was, I don't want to like get emotional, but it was like such an intense moment for me because it was like, it just all clicked, because up to that point I was like, I want to be a dancer. I want to be a doctor. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be all the things. And then it was like, from that day on, I was like, dude, you can be all of those things. Newsflash, you can be all of it. Write the stories and then be the thing, And so from that day on, I was like, that's it. That's what I'm doing with my life. Like in some capacity or another, I want to reach people through storytelling. And so I started off in theater and started off a few years passed. And my first audition was for like the traveling touring show of Annie or something. And I made it to the second callbacks for Pepper, but I didn't make the show. But I remember it like lit a fire under me that has never, has never changed or dimmed or gone away or whatever. And from that moment on, it was like choir, musical theater. I didn't get into film until I was a lot older, like in my late teens. But it was just like, no matter what I chose to do in life and no matter what like weird path I went on or what weird thing I thought I had to do at any point in time, it all boiled back down to storytelling, right? Like telling these stories and like allowing myself to get lost in this story and hoping that maybe I could bring someone along with me, like if they needed it or wanted it, And so I've danced for most of my life too. And I realized that I had a little bit of like like a self-confidence thing. Like after I was a competitive gymnast as a kid and then got injured and that kind of didn't go the direction I wanted. I wanted to be an Olympian and then I would be an actor, right? Like those were my job. That was my life laid out as like a 9-year-old or whatever, and then I got injured and had to quit and that just devastated me. And then I started studying martial arts more seriously, but like as an older, I herniated a disc in my back and then I ruptured my hamstring and it was pretty severe. And at the time we just didn't really have money for like a physical therapist or whatever. It was kind of one of those things where, we were just kind of paying the gym tuition and I would have the discount version of the leotard and I would have the discount version of the legs, the sweatsuit, it was like, we were barely hanging on to like what it was. And so I think subconsciously I allowed myself to not be as insistent about continuing training because I knew what a burden it was. And then I had a bunch of other little injuries too. I tore up my shins. I was working on specific movements that were kind of tailored to me because I was getting up there in a higher level and my legs were messed up. I was an old lady at like age 12. It was done for me. I got aged out. Yeah. I was just like a geriatric little kid gymnast. It just wasn't working for me. But after that point, I started to get into martial arts and like tricking and things like that. So, doing like cool stunts in the air as part of like a free running parkour series or something into like cool martial arts forums or whatever. So that was something that kind of allowed me to use my skill set and continue on in an athletic, like a pursuit, but not necessarily at the level that I was at before. So, but it's funny because it's all of the things that resonated with me throughout everything that I've done. And I've done a lot of stuff. Like, sometimes I look back and I'm like, where did I have all the time? Where did all the year? How did I cram this much stuff into that many years? It doesn't make any sense, but I was all over the place as a kid. I was just into everything, but it all boiled down to like storytelling and connecting with people and telling stories, or creating stories and making that a part of whatever it was that I was doing. And it took me a while before I kind of circled back to like, okay, I want to like get back into class and I'm going to go to school for this and I'm going to like really pursue it and learn about the business aspect of it. And that didn't come until I was like 19 or 20, but, which is fine. I was just being a kid before then, and trying to be an Olympian, I guess, whatever. But, yeah. And then, just ever since then, I've been working on and off either as a dancer or, doing film stuff or musical theater stuff. I got back to that a few years ago, which was really awesome, super exciting and fun. And then all the way up until last year where there was no theater and no live performances of any kind. So it was all film and all filming in your home with a green screen, which is all I've been doing for the last year, basically. So yeah, I know mine's like just over there. Yeah.
Wow, cool. I can relate to your gymnastic pursuits because I was a diver.
Oh yeah, you're telling, yeah.
And I qualified to try out for the U.S. Olympic diving team.
Wow.
And I placed in the nationals high enough to qualify to have the tryouts. And
wow,
I was super excited about it. But that year, the Russians weren't playing good on the national front, and the U.S. boycotted the Olympics that year. So I didn't get a chance to to
Oh,
fulfill my Olympic. And you know what? I think I would have made the team as an alternate. I don't know if I would actually made the team because, you know, there were some really good world class divers on our team, as you know. But when you go to the diving camp, when you qualify, they train you for 4 to 6 months with the team.
yeah,
And so you're learning, you're doing all the tramp work and you're doing all the training and the exercise and you're working with, you know, the masseuses and the dietitians and you're getting, you know, they treat you as if you're on the team
yeah,
and and everything that you have access to. And then at the end of it all, just before they have to commit to who's actually going to be on the team and who's actually going to be the alternates, that's when you have to try out. So they'll have an actual official meet, and
right.
uh, and then you know the top people make the team, and then they have alternates.
Yeah,
And so my coach was telling me, he's like, um, you could you could totally be an alternate if you do what I think you're going to do with how you got here, then you could totally make the team. And he got me believing, and I really did think I could make the team because I
yeah.
was willing to put the work in, and,
Mm.
and I was a serious athlete and I was in the best shape, and I came up through the ranks so fast. Nobody knew who I was. I didn't know how to swim in high school when I was a
Oh,
junior,
wow.
and I joined the swim team when I was a senior, and only because I could do I could slam dunk, so I had good ups, and I could tumble, and I could do tramp work, and I wasn't a gymnast, but I could do a lot of gymnastics tricks. You know, I could
Sure.
do handsprings, and you know I could do a back handspring double, but
Yeah.
it was just all like street parkour, just me being, you know, a crazy daredevil kid. You know, I
Mhm.
wasn't on the team or anything. It was just like, you know, don't tell Kimmel to do something. That dude will try it. You know, it's like, you know, parkour before parkour was parkour, you know, just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So when I told the coach, I was like, I don't know how to swim. He goes, I'll teach you how to swim. But, you know, if you can do what you're doing on a trampoline, on a diving board, like we got us a diver. And I was like, yeah, sure. Teach me how to swim. I'll go for it. And
Crazy.
so basically, I learned how to swim in like 3 days. And uh, my swimming lessons was hold your breath and just stroke and kick as far as you can, and then lift up, see where you are, and then from the diving board to the ladder, that's a shorter distance.
That's amazing. I feel like half the battle is just not being afraid, right? Like just being like,
Yeah,
okay, I'll try that.
yeah, that's exactly it. And I was
Yeah.
that guy. And and my swim coach, we didn't have a diving coach. The swim coach was the swim coach of the team,
Hmm.
but every other high school had a swim coach, and then the assistant coach was the diving coach, or vice versa. Like the
Okay.
coach was the diving coach, and that was like the meat of the team, and the assistant was the swimming coach, and just
Mhm.
sat with a clipboard and a timer and blew the whistle,
Right.
you know. And basically, they focused on a diver. So, but my program was a swim coach who barely cared about the swimmers and knew nothing about diving. And they're like, okay, you guys just go down there and just do whatever you do. So we basically kind of coach each other. And because the other two divers were really competitive,
Mm.
we pushed each other.
Yeah.
And we would just, you know, just basically kind of pick the brain of other divers and other coaches at meets and then go back and then just
Yeah.
try stuff.
That's
And
so funny. How cool.
that's basically how I climbed up through the ranks, and then I got a scholarship to dive at Michigan State, but I didn't have residency, so the out of state tuition was too much for me to handle, and I
Yeah.
couldn't find additional grants or scholarships to cover it. So I ended up going to IU and playing basketball for like a Division III, and but I still like dove, and I joined the AAU, which was the AAU was the feeder program for the Olympics,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
and then I looked at where all the meets were. So I qualified for a state meet, and the state meet qualifies you for the nationals.
Mhm.
And then once you are, once you place certain far in the nationals, then you qualify to try out for the Olympics, and they take you in for like 6 months. And
Yeah.
so it was very, very cool. And like you said, when you just live, you have all these great stories, and there's a movie in the whole thing that
Yeah.
I did that I think would be a very compelling story.
Cool. All
So
right.
that's like
I want to
that's
see it on the 40-foot screen.
so what's your favorite part of the industry? Like what's like I like touching everything, as a comedian, I like the performing and the live audience and the
Yeah.
reaction and that cheer and that laughter. That's a high. I love, to sit back and write and create and see what works and doesn't work. I like managing projects and producing projects. I like directing and you know taking the assets that are in front of me and what's in my brain and putting it all together and coming up with something and then watching people react to it, in a dark theater.
Yeah.
What's your favorite like part of this whole entertainment, creative, collaborative, or do you like it all, or like what's your favorite part of all
I
this?
I mean, there's very few
Hold that
things
thought.
in
Hold that
life.
thought. Hold that
Okay.
thought.
Okay.
I forgot to plug my laptop in, and my battery's
The
going to die. Here, let me get.
battery's gonna die.
When things get
Anyway,
good.
the voice from beyond.
You don't catch it in time, then you got to go back. You got to charge the computer and get online and get the Zoom going and sign everybody back in.
Oh gosh.
It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah. Technology is great, except when it's not.
Yeah. There we go. Man, I caught that just in time.
Crisis averted.
There we go.
That's the magical sound.
It was down to like 5%. I didn't even notice it.
Woo.
And I'm like, oh.
That happened to me the other day. I was auditioning and I just glanced over and I was like, how do I plug? Like I'm trying to think of the lines and they're like, and I'm like, how do I plug my phone in with my foot? There's like an outlet like that. I was like, okay, I'm gonna play it cool. Nobody needs to know. It was
I got a plug in my toes and trying to plug.
Like trying to grab it with foot, like shaking the whole thing. And I was like, they were like, you okay? It's like everything's great. It's great. Everything's great.
It's funny. All right, so go ahead.
Right.
Your favorite part of this whole journey, because there's lots of great nuggets and lots of cool things, and you're just a snowflake on the iceberg. Even though you've been doing it a while and you've done a lot of stuff, I think there's a lot of grand things that you would probably like to do that's ahead of you.
Yeah.
And anticipating how fun that would be.
Yeah. I think thus far, and I still consider myself, like I'm forever a student and always learning, and grateful for the experience I have, of course, but I learn so much every day. Like every time I walk onto the set, I try to do it as, like with the eyes of a child or whatever that saying is, I try to think about, asking a lot of questions and just being really engaged and really interested. But I think my favorite part, what I was going to say is to me, there's nothing more exhilarating than that feeling. And this is all the same, right, across the mediums. Like the second that, like the first note you sing into the mic, or the first like moment, like where they call action, like that rush that you get, or like, you step onto the stage and you see the audience and the lights come on, they're all different versions of the same thing for me. And that that of course for me is like the potential of everything I could create in this moment, right? Like a lifetime of life behind me and this character's world and everybody around and all the energy in the room, like all of that exchange that happens in that moment for me is like, you know, the most exhilarating thing in the world. But so I mean, that aspect of it is definitely my favorite, but I'm also, I really love, I've done a lot of producing for dance. Like I've produced festivals, I've produced lots of curated shows, I've produced and written shows, and I'm getting into that with film now. Mostly because it was coming. It was like something that was on the horizon for me. And then the pandemic kind of like pushed, you know, I was like, well, I'm not on set ever, so I should just sit down and write the thing, right? Because there's nothing else to really do. But that, like the creation of the story is an aspect that I don't really enjoy writing, but figuring out how to get my ideas down and transferable to other people's brains to help me bring things to life has been really rewarding and really exciting and really interesting, and just like taking away the feeling that like you have to sit around and wait for something to happen for you. I think that's like a big, you know, topic in the industry as far as actors go. Like, don't wait for somebody to cast you in the role that you want to play, just write it for yourself or whatever. I mean, easier said than done, of course, but so the creating work has been really like a new in film specifically. Creating work in the last year has been really exciting and interesting. And I like kind of project managing, you know, I like thinking about how to create the full experience, and learning how to do that in the context of filmmaking there's a learning curve that I'm on right now, figuring out all of the elements that need to be in place. It's very different than live performance, of course, but that's been really challenging, but really, really exciting and rewarding. And I'm learning a lot every time that I do it. I have a huge project tomorrow that I'm like in charge of all of the things, and I'm in it, and I'm, you know, writing it and directing it. I'm going to do some camera work, and like I'm lighting and figuring it out. And it's like, you know, location planning and all of it. Right. So I'm just like, I don't like the feeling of overwhelm, but the feeling of like, okay, I can like craft all of these elements to really, really bring this to life. And luckily I know a lot of really talented people who are willing to help out and be a part of it and lend their talents and skills. So I'm very lucky in that way, but I like that aspect of it too. Just like, here's the idea, here are resources, bring it to life, go, you know. Just like problem solving all of these things, like this is the budget and this is how much that thing costs, who do I know that can do this, you know, and we can trade, or what favor does this person know? You know, like just figuring out all of those elements, and then really figuring out ways for people within the community, within the industry, to like work together, because everybody's working towards something, right? And I'm like, hey, dude that was, you know, boom mic operator on this short film I worked on 2 years ago, you told me you're interested in working on this kind of project. Well, I'm writing this kind of project. Would you be willing to do this if I bring you on to this, and then you can do that, you know? And it's like making these connections and like finding how everybody can kind of work together and you know, just be in community to create is really, it's super rewarding. It's really challenging, and sometimes I get a little like frustrated because I just want to do this. I just want to act, you know, like I just want to walk. I just want to know what I'm doing and then go on set and then make it happen. And then let everybody else worry about craft services and all that, you know, like, let everybody else handle all that other stuff. I don't know what's wrong with that light, but you have the battery and you're going to fix it, you know, like, and I love you for that. And you're really good at that. And I'm going to be over here working on my character, you know, like not being able to do that is like, sometimes, but having that like creative control to really steer the ship, and also to have, I really like hearing people's ideas. Like I'm never offended if somebody's like, hey, have you thought about this shot in this way? I'm like, no, I haven't, because that's not, your brain is not my brain, and I love that idea. Or no, I haven't, but I think that idea would be great for this other scene, you know, like I really like that process too. And I think hopefully, I mean, the feedback that I get from people, they're like, it's really, really easy to work on your projects because everything's really high stakes because you want to tell these big stories, but I don't feel the pressure of being so boxed into doing it your way that I can't function in my best way, you know? And that's what I try to do, you know, is like really focus on when I'm working with people, in that capacity in a directorial role or whatever, producing or whatever, is try to be, think about everyone's strengths. Like, how are you going to be your best self in this project that I'm asking you to do or be on? And like, what do I have to pivot in order to facilitate you? And where are my boundaries, and what are no, like, what are things that I won't budge on? And is that really truly a hard boundary, or is there a reason that that's a hard boundary? Is there a shortcoming in my own knowledge, and that's why I set that? Or if I could learn this, can we do, it's like this dance. It's this constant dance of like figuring out how to piece it all together. And it's really, I mean, it's exhilarating. It's really exciting. It's very frustrating. It pisses me off to no end, but I also love it. So, so it's
Well,
cool to take on that role.
do you find that when you are in charge of it all and you are literally responsible for every single detail that is, on the back end and front end of what goes into your production, do you find that when you are just an actor on someone else's project, that it makes you a better producer and production manager on your own stuff, or anybody who hires you to do that, and vice versa? Because I have found that when I get to just do the one thing, we just want you to do, here's your lines, here's your scene, that's it. And then you get to watch like all the things that basically yourself and you and your mini crew doing all this stuff. And you could just get to just be like, wow, I can literally pick up a ton of ideas because I'm on the set, but I'm not responsible for anything, which means I can absorb so much more as an observer.
Totally.
And paint it. I've even like taken notes just on stuff that I've seen. I'm like, oh, so that's how they do that.
Yeah.
And vice versa. When you are, the person who's in charge of doing every single thing, and then you find that you just have to do the one thing on this set, you become really good at that because you know what each department needs from you as you're doing this thing.
Yeah.
So now you're not just coming in half baked, mailing in, the project or the work. Now, it's like, oh, maybe I'll label it because then the editor's going to make it easier for him. Or maybe I'll organize the audio files this way, or maybe I'll make sure that the shot they need is this, or maybe I'll organize the lights and the cables because, it'll be easy for the breakdown at the end of the day, or whatever. It's just like little things that that when you're doing that one job, because you do so many of the other department's jobs, and then you realize all those tiny little microscopic little tasks that they don't do that you now have to do, you find that you're better at anything that you touch now. Do you find that as being like the same experience?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a lot of it for me was like, especially after just this last year, and I started working in these positions that I would never really have touched before. Like, I'm asking questions that I didn't even know were questions that needed to be asked, like, I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that as a detail for me to, really focus on that aspect of the lighting, or like, I'm going to paint the scene this way, but I need to be considerate about how the camera's going to move in this action. And if I can give, like, I really like how that director just directed me in that way. I'm going to remember how he explained that to me because I'm going to save that, and that's going to, if I can communicate in that way with this person that I'm going to be working with, I think that'll be really effective for them, and it's like, my eyes are just so open all the time. And I'm always really interested in what's going on as much as I can be. If it's like a super emotional scene, I try, I'm like, my capacity is limited, of course, which I think everybody kind of has to like, if you're like pouring tears out of your eyes and you're freaking out because your dog died or whatever, whatever the scene is, I don't know. But I'm so much more aware of everyone's workload, first of all. Secondly, I'm just so much more like, I feel like I'm absorbing so much information all the time when I get to just be, doing that kind of one function. And it does really inform how I approach playing those other roles in different projects, totally, because I just feel like like I said, I feel like I'm asking questions that I didn't even know were questions that you need to ask. Like I'm learning and understanding things that I didn't even know were a thing, like
Right.
they seemed like behind this veil that I didn't ever really go beyond. And now that I've been on both sides, it's like my understanding of the complexity of that is like so much deeper. And it's really cool. Like it's a really cool process. And I feel like I can connect better with people on the set. Like I want to know everyone's name. I want to know what this guy's doing and how I can, if I need to sit in the chair differently, I want the sound guy to be able to communicate that to the director or to me, to be like, hey, can you move your hair? Cause like, and so I've worked with people before where they're just like, the actors are not as like cool about that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what? I feel like there's a misunderstanding or maybe a lack of understanding or a lack of effort on people's parts to like really be like, this person's job is difficult for these reasons and it entails this amount of work. And if we can work together, that streamlines the entire process. And it's just one conversation, like it's just a quick little acknowledgement of like, hey, nice to see you here. Let me know if there's, something that I'm doing that can make your job easier, or that if we can work together to make this run more smoothly or whatever. And I've always asked those questions and thought about those things, but I'm like on another level with it now that I'm doing it, for my own work. I'm just like,
Right.
oh my gosh, there's so much to think about and consider. And I've been bringing notebooks to set too, to take notes about like what I'm saying and how people are handling things and how people rig this and how people do that. And, like, so it's, people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just research. Okay. I'm just doing research. Like, don't worry about my notebook.
What is what is one thing that you learn on set from watching an actor work that was very profound for you? That was like a ah moment, like the clouds opened up and it was kind of an epiphany of of something that you were like, okay, this is totally going to make me a better actor.
I think,
Something specific.
yeah, let's see. Well, the thing that I'm thinking of wasn't when I was on set, but I was with a group of actresses that were the top like ladies in the city at the time. And I was like, I had just signed with my agent. I was brand new, had no idea what was going on. I just happened to be put in a group with these like literally the top 5 actresses minus this one woman that's still very successful in the Portland market at the time, like 10 years ago. And I was like so young. I just like, I didn't even know what was going on. And I remember we were talking about like just the difference between working on your craft and working in your craft. And that like blew my mind open. I was like, so they were like, you can be going to class, you can be working on technique, or you can be working in the craft and be doing the thing. And you have to really think about those two things as separate entities, right? Like you're working on the business aspect, or you're working on, understanding the craft better from the outside, but that only takes you so far. You have to like get on the other side of it and really think about how to apply these things, and that for me was a huge epiphany, like way early on in my career. And I remember listening to them talk about the process of that, like making sure that they're spending equal amounts of time doing both. So they were like, if I'm not working, I need to write a scene for myself or take something from some movie or whatever and make sure that I'm working in the craft as well as working on the craft. For me, being in class doesn't necessarily, even being in a scene with a scene partner, like that's me being directed. That's me having somebody kind of facilitate me working on what I'm working on, but working in it and finding my way on my own and really figuring out my intuitive choices, figuring out the way my mind moves when I'm in character, and figuring out how deep that in that direction I actually want to go, like really thinking about who I become as an entity when I've got somebody else on me in with me, you know, like the character, when I'm stewarding the story of this character, what are my real choices internally? And do I separate those things anymore? Do I go so deep in that I don't think about myself as an individual? Like I'm, you know, we're talking about technique, right? Like this is, you know, what technique you practice or which resonates with you most. But just that like conversation of like working on the craft versus working in the craft was like really mind blowing. And I'll say that things that I've seen, like when I've been on set and like this has been like years long light bulb moments going off that kind of led me to like my own like whoa moment when I was on set by myself. Essentially, I was in a short film a couple years ago that was just me acting against an AI device that was voiced, you know, a voiceover that got put on after the fact. So even in the film as I'm acting, I didn't even hear his lines or anything. I was really just acting to like a box. And having like really serious, deep emotional conversations with like a box, you know? And I remember I was like, I have been an athlete my entire life. And I've been collecting these little things that I've seen people do on set, right? Like their ticks, their whatever they do, like right before you call action, you know, there's always something, right? There's some little ritual that people have, whether they know it or not. And I've tried to collect those over the years. And then finally I was in this really intense scene by myself, you know, just the director, the DP, and then the boom, like there were 4 people on set. It was a super small set. And I had this moment right before, you know, he was kind of talking me into what was about to happen again and giving me something to think about. And I was like, where's my ritual? What the hell am I thinking? Why would I do this without giving my, like aligning myself the same way I would I ever even pretend like I would walk into the gym without warming up? Like, what is wrong with me? You know, I was like, oh, I'm not taking this even as close to as seriously as I could be. If I like had a ritual that I could do to get myself in this moment, why have I not been doing that? And it was like all of the times I'd seen people on set, all of those little like interesting, like, you know, whatever their thing was, right? It was like it all like kind of came flooding back and I was so inspired and I was like, oh my God, I've got to sit down and like write this out or like plan this out and be much more methodical about how I enter into this work because I haven't been. And I haven't been reaching my potential. And luckily, like I figured that out in the middle of the process of this film. And I think I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's the moment that I figured that out, you know, like, oh, look, she's an actor now. Good job. You know, like, you know, try not to be too self-critical, but it's funny because I do feel like I can see the switch where it was like, oh, that was the day. That was the scene. Okay. Yes. That's very clear to me that I finally like got it, you know, like a light bulb went off, but it was just cool. Like I had this catalog of all these little nuances, all these little things that I've seen people do. And I was like, I'm sure I do things too that I'm not even that aware of, but I want to be more conscious about it and really figure that out. And maybe that's a mantra. Maybe it's like, I do believe, obviously you have to get your physical body ready. I feel like people maybe don't talk about that as much, but it was like a total light bulb moment, you know, where I was just like, all of those things that I had collected over the years kind of like popped into my head at once. And I was just like, oh, right. Oh my God. Like, that's the thing that I need to be doing. I should have been doing, but here we are. This is where I am in the journey and I'm going to start doing it now. And so now I have kind of a specific series of things that I do to prepare myself almost, you know, for the practical reasons of it, of course, to like get your mouth ready to say words and to like think about where tension is being stored in your body. And is that serving the story? Is it not serving the story? Is that my stuff that I need to let go of? Or am I putting this on because this is the character's thing, you know, like figuring that out. But also it helped me to kind of come to the craft with a level of like reverence that I hadn't really understood yet, if that makes sense, you know? So it was almost like I was making like an offering, you know, of myself in this moment. Like, here's my thing that I do. Like, I'm prepared to be a vehicle for the story. Like, I'm going to bring the things that I have. And I'm also thinking about all the other elements. And like, here we go. Like, I'm ready now, you know? Yeah.
Well, I can appreciate that. That's a great um, story that you have, like figuring out like your thing. And for me, it was, and I'm trying to remember the movie that I was on. Um, I want to say Midnight Run with Robert De Niro and John Grodin. Um, I noticed that for every scene, they did exactly the same thing. Like they nailed the moment. I mean, nailed it. And then nailed it again, but did like the exact same thing from the next shot. And then when they reversed the angle and did the establishing shot, it was the exact same thing. And it never dawned on me until I started shooting and I started directing, and mostly when I started editing, because when you edit, you're taking all of this footage. You're taking an establishing shot. You're taking like the front shot. You're taking the over the shoulder shot. You're taking like, and you're getting coverage from the exact same scene so that when you're cutting back and forth, you got coverage. You got all these different options.
Right.
If the actor doesn't do the exact same thing on from every angle, you're cutting a nightmare. And now you have these priceless moments, but the the straight on shot when they're making the gestures right here, but when you move the camera and you do the reverse angle, it's here.
Hmm.
So if all the angles when you hit that moment, that point, your hand is here, and then you cut, and all of a sudden your hand is here, and then you cut back, and your hand is back here,
Right.
and then you cut again, your hand is here, and it's supposed to be one moment.
Right.
Like, how is your hand coming from here to here when you're in this moment, but you're nailing the moment each time, but
Right.
if the actor physically isn't physically conscious of where everything is, and I'm just sitting there going, I never ever thought about that ever, and all of a sudden it makes sense because I'm like, wow, this dude's doing exactly the same scene the exact same way every single take and still nailing the moment. And then when you go into the editing room and you're cutting back and forth between all these angles, and it doesn't matter what angle you're cutting from, the physical um, movement and face is exactly the same. That's that was an epiphany for me because
Yeah.
I was like, okay, just do the scene. And who cares if it's a little bit different when they reverse the angle or when they do the establishing shot? Like, what difference does it make? You know, and in my
Right.
head, I did not take that serious until I was sitting as an extra watching, like, because as an extra, it's a lot of like hurry up and wait, and you're sitting there forever,
Right.
and then all of a sudden the scene happens. But even when you're in the scene, you still get to watch, and as they do different angles, you still like get to watch like how that all works because they're doing different setups of the camera, but the same, and the scene and the dialogue and the moments are all exactly the same.
Yeah.
And that was something that when once I discovered that and then I tried it, I didn't realize how hard that is
Yeah.
to do exactly the same for 10 takes.
Yeah.
Think you're doing it, but then it's just like, well, you weren't exactly the same as, we in order for this coverage to work perfectly, in editing, and which is why a lot of footage gets trashed because
Right.
some of the continuity between the front shot and the reverse angle is so drastic that you can't even use the coverage. You gotta,
Right.
maybe you're zooming in to cut out what was inconsistent in that shot to try to make the coverage work. And that blew me away. and I really, really noticed it when I started editing and I started shooting other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And the actor, the director, there was no scripty that could catch all the incontinuities. And then you're in editing and you can't put any of it together because
Right.
it's like none of this stuff will work because you can't cut. The coverage isn't consistent. The positions of their bodies and their face, or something as simple as a glass of wine, and in this scene it's half full, and on the reverse angle it's like a quarter full, and then
Right.
the establishing scene it's full, and
Right.
you're cutting back and forth every 10 seconds between those three shots.
Yeah.
And some people notice and some people don't.
Yeah.
And I found myself, because I started noticing that, like I now look for that in other shows and other films.
Yeah.
I look for those like inconsistencies. And then once I became a 3D coordinator, because I really thought 3D was going to be the shit. So I'm learning everything you could possibly learn. I took all of the 3D stereoscopic classes. I was a 3D coordinator. I was a 3D supervisor. I knew the camera inside and out. I knew, passive 3D glasses, active 3D glasses, how all the technology worked. I mean, I took it so serious because I am going to be the go-to guy in Hollywood for 3D.
Right.
I don't care what you talk about. But when it comes to 3D, you want to talk to Kimbrough because he knows all that shit. And you learn a lot of that stuff, and then you start looking at all of it, and then you start picking up all these inconsistencies. Now, what I learned from working in 3D was frame violations. Frame violations is like the kiss of death in 3D, because if you are supposed to be this depth perception, so like my hands, like if this was a 3D shot, if I come in, like this shot would mean my hands are going into the audience, right?
Right.
Okay. So as long as my hands are inside the frame, that's a good effect. But the second like my elbow goes outside the frame, that's a frame violation. So now this disappears.
Right. Right.
So you got like a cut off hand doing this, but it's in the audience.
Right. Floating appendage. Yeah. That.
Floating appendage that is just like not attached to the body.
Oh man, I didn't think about that. That's funny. Yeah. Weird. I guess. Yeah. If you.
That would be a frame violation. So in order for it to work, everything has to be within the frame in order for the 3D to work. The second that you go out like that, now your fingers are cut off.
You just have a palm like
that.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's wild.
It's like the fingers, the hands in your face, but wait a minute, the fingers are cut. Where's the finger? Where was your fingers?
Man, that's funny. That totally makes sense though. I never would have thought about that, I guess.
Yeah, but working in 3D also trained me to be super conscious with consistencies in scenes and consistencies in your body and facial expression, and to make a conscious effort, like where was my hand in this scene, and how was I looking? And was my hat on straight, or was it, just when I touched the person? Because sometimes you make choices in the scene,
right?
And oh, that was awesome, but you got to remember those choices.
I know,
because you're gonna do it again, and you're gonna do reversing. Yeah. You're gonna do this. It's like, so whenever I make a choice, I try to embed all that stuff so that I can do it exactly the same the next time. And then when it comes to angles, and or even tell my scene partner, I was like, okay, like help remind me like where I was when I did this, or what I touched, or what I did. And we all have things to try to remember on our own, but that was one of the biggest takeaways that I noticed that made my acting 1,000 times better, because I knew my scenes would make the movie if the consistency was there from take to take
Right.
and angle to angle.
Sure. Yeah, like bringing that level of mindfulness, and then like what a great tool to have from athletics, like spatial awareness.
Yeah.
If it's like the move is this and then this, and it's like somebody tells you that, being able to be like, oh, I understand, like I can get that in my body, like, and then you can do it. I think it's just like such an invaluable tool to have, to be able to like use in this way. It's pretty cool.
So did you do a lot of dance productions as part of your development of your resume, or did you do some dance, or you're mostly, was producing, directing, acting, whatever, but did you do a lot of dance performances?
I did, yeah, and I still
Did you
do.
have
Like,
to audition for them?
no, I mean, for the most part, I kind of made my own way. It's a really different world, I'll say, especially in the dance genre that I'm most heavily invested in. And like, so I moved to LA. I grew up back and forth between LA and Portland as a kid. And I finally moved to LA when I was pretty young, a young adult. How old was I? I don't even remember. But I went to act, and then I just started booking all this dance stuff. It just kind of happened. And it was like, that was the stuff that was making me money, any money at all. So then I just kind of went down that rabbit hole. And at that point I had been studying dance pretty seriously. I mean, for my whole life, of course, but like I started, training in dance at like when I started training in gymnastics pretty seriously. So I've been doing ballet and jazz, forever. Um, but I started really, really pursuing, like, I was like, oh, I could do this. Like I could have a career in this. And so it wasn't like typical music video stuff. It wasn't like that kind of stuff. It was like people were curating these shows and highlighting soloists or companies or whatever for their curated shows. And the world that I've been in, it's like really driven by festivals. People will host festivals all over the world, and they fly you in and you teach your workshops and then you perform. And it's like, it only exists in this way because it was growing as social media became a thing, right? So in the few years before I started to get into it, like when social media was first like becoming a thing, I was still a kid. So that wasn't necessarily part of my upbringing from the beginning as an adult in a dance career, but it was like, you were on MySpace or whatever was back then, and then Facebook, and then Instagram, and like TikTok, blah, 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 Snapchat or whatever. And that was like how people built their personas and their careers. So it was really interesting because for me as a dancer, I never really had to audition for anything ever. I just like forged my own path, as many of my like peers also did, because the world was just shrinking because of YouTube and because of, like Instagram and Facebook and stuff. So like it was a really different journey, like a completely different journey than my acting journey, but they were really happening at the same time. So I was, making a name for myself or whatever, people, I was winning like a festival in Germany and going to Ukraine and touring Ireland or whatever. So, I was kind of building my persona and my brand. And meanwhile, like doing extras work, and like not feeling like I was making much progress as an actor, but still in the industry and still involved and trying to do what I could. But it was like, I was just having so much success as a dancer that I just kind of went down that pathway really hard, and even stopped acting actually for like 2 or 3 years. But all the shows that I produced had like mini plays in them because I couldn't stop, like, and all of my, my dancers would be like, I'm not really comfortable with saying lines on stage. Can I just do the choreography? And I'd be like, your character feels differently. So let's just talk about that. And they'd be like, what character? And I'm like, the character that you're dancing, obviously. They'd be like, oh my God, I did not even know. And I'm like, you're going to speak on stage and it's going to be great. I'm going to help you through it. And I believe in you. They're just like, what did I sign up for? But anybody that's worked with me in the last like 10 years knows, they're like, oh, Bevin's probably going to make us do some weird like actor exercise. And then we're going to like talk about our feelings a lot. I don't know. But like, so no matter what I've been doing, it always kind of brings back that pretty like specific storytelling element. So like a show that I produced in Boston when I lived there for 3 years was like for my friend, the band that I worked with often, danced with this band often around the like New England area. They had a show for their album, and their album kind of took you on a musical journey from Egypt up to Russia. And so it was called like, I can't, 30th Meridian, which is the meridian that, you know, goes from Egypt up into Russia, I guess. I think that's right. But anyways, so, you know, we all had our like stories, you know, and we had this whole story that we were telling, and I didn't make any of them speak. I handled all of it because I got so much pushback about it. But, but, you know, it was a play. It just became, we called it a dance ballet, or a belly dance ballet. And so it was like, people were like, I don't even know what this is, you know? And I'm like, well, I'm making dancers act, and it's going to be great because they're doing it anyway. They're telling a story with their bodies. We're just going to do a little bit more in the storytelling department. You know, they're like, I trust you. So luckily I know a lot of, like I said before, really talented people who kind of helped me to continue to like interweave these interests, even when I thought I like wasn't acting, or I was like done with acting for now or whatever. You know, I was still kind of working on my chops in that way, but just in a peripheral way. You know, I was kind of sneaking my way back into like, I'm acting, but not really. I'm dancing, but I'm actually acting, but I'm doing both, you know? So I never was in a situation where I was doing a lot of like dance auditions. I was really me, like kind of forging my own path and producing my own work and creating, like making a dance company and curating pieces for this show that this band hired me to make for their, you know, like it was so much more about me kind of as a free like agent and coordinating other dancers. So a lot of the times I would hold auditions for things, but it was never me in that position. So my journey in that way was totally different than my journey in the acting world, because all I'm doing all the time is auditioning, you know, like not all the time, but you know, such a big part of it is like you're auditioning and there's other people making content, and you are, you know, essentially showing them what you have to offer, and maybe it works out and maybe it doesn't or whatever, you know. So it just wasn't the case. I was like all me. I was like, this is my show and I'm making it and I'm in it, obviously. And here's who else is going to be in it. And it's like all about like, you know, I'm decision making and stuff. So stepping into that role in film has been, I have a huge arsenal of work to like support me, you know, to think about how to do it. But it's so totally different than like live performance for stage, like totally different. But it does have a skill set that's similar. So I'm thankful for that. But yeah, they've been two like totally different journeys that have kind of been just happening parallel. Now I'm paranoid about frame issues. I don't want my 3D moment to go out of thinking about it a lot. Disembodied elbows or something. Yeah.
You have a great voice. Are you doing voiceover stuff as well? Or is that something that you've maybe thought about expanding your talent arsenal into the voiceover world? And also too, the motion capture actors. Are you doing any of that? Because they're looking for athletes and dancers who
really
are very, very endowed with their bodies and control their bodies, because you know, those the CG characters that are attached to the body, you're literally doing their physical action. You're bringing them to life. So have you thought about doing voiceover and motion capture work?
Yeah, you know, voiceover work is something I've always been interested in. I haven't even begun the process of like, I'm like, that's the thing that seems cool. And oh my God, I've got this audition I've got to prepare, and I'm writing this film, you know, so it's been like something that I've thought a lot about. I just haven't really gone down that avenue yet, but it's definitely, I mean, it sounds awesome. I mean, I have a couple of friends that do like audiobooks as their day job, you know, and they do like, you know, voiceover, whatever gigs they get, they do auditions or whatever. And it seems like a super cool world to get involved in. And I think it would be a lot of fun. So it's something on my radar for sure. I think once I have a little bit of downtime after this batch of projects, I have the producer that produced my first EP a couple of years ago. I've been trying to encourage her also to make like a demo reel because she has all the equipment, everything you could need. So maybe we'll do it together. Maybe I'll convince her to do hers and then I'll have her record one for me too.
I think you should. You've got a great voice. You're a good storyteller voice, good narrator voice, good, commercial. I think you should look into that.
Okay, I will. You're not the first person to encourage me to do that lately. So maybe it's a sign from the universe that I should.
Sign from the universe.
But the motion capture thing, that's always something I've been interested in. I met this
physically dialed in, like the
Yeah.
dancers and the athletes makes the best motion capture actors,
Yeah.
because you literally are doing those tiny little extra things that athletes and dancers can do with their body to bring that character to life, whereas an actor may not. An
Right.
actor, if you're a theater actor, you might be too big,
Sure.
but too theatrical versus making a precise movement that animation would make. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, or if you're TV and film, you may not be big enough.
Right.
You're so busy, you're so used to working with camera and film, you're not thinking about like all the tiny little things like a cat would do.
Right.
You just but a dancer or an athlete, somebody who is really into their body and studies an animal and how they move, and then you're now the cat,
Right.
Lion King, that has to bring that CGI animal to life.
Yeah.
Then you'll, as a dancer, because you are dialed in with every inch of your body, the movement that you make in motion capture will be way cooler, way more fluent, way more, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was when I was in LA, I met this gentleman that was doing some kind of project, and it never ended up happening. He contacted me like a couple of years ago, and I hadn't talked to him in like 8 years or something since I moved away from LA. But I was rehearsing for something on the beach. Like it was like I couldn't afford studio time. I was like total starving actor, like total the whole thing. I was rehearsing something, and he was like, I don't want to be weird, and this is super weird, but I am really interested in how you're moving right now, not in a weird way, but I'm making this film, and I like really need people that are dialed in and that understand like animation styles and like popping and like really nuanced, isolations and stuff. And he's like, so can I just like get your contact? And it was really funny. And I was like, oh, I never thought about how, because what I do specifically, like my style is like you could go on Instagram and look, like it's so nuanced, isolation heavy, right? Like I do a lot of different dance styles, but there's so much about it that's like, how subtle can I be? And you still can pick up like the slightest little bit of like, and I can still affect you, right? And that's like been my kind of interest for a long time. But I was like, wow, that seems like it would be a good skill for like, the whole world of like CGI, like understanding where the sensors are on your body and understanding like the most subtle, like slight movement would make this effect or that effect or whatever. So it's always been something I've been interested in. There's not a lot of work like that comes through Portland at all. So that's the thing, is like figuring out how to, like stretch my resources in a way that actually makes sense for what comes through Portland. But I mean, it seems like something that's right up my alley. So
Have you ever thought about coming back to Los Angeles and jumping back in the fray now that you have kind of honed your chops in so many different disciplines and so many different, areas? Have you thought about coming back and ramping it up into a whole nother kind of phase?
I've thought about it a lot. I have a daughter now, so she is she's 6, and our family's up here. My dad lives down there. He just actually moved to Rancho Mirage, which is kind of far from LA. He's been in LA since I was a kid, but up until last year. So I've definitely thought about it. It's something that's kind of always on my mind. And being in Clubhouse, I will say that people are so funny because like I've had the conversation a lot, I've listened to a lot of other actors that are like, should I move to LA? Like, what should I do? And you'll have some people that are like, you don't need to be in LA. It's the middle of a pandemic. Like, if they want you, they'll fly you down. And then other people are like, you better get serious about your career and get to LA immediately if you want to be an actor. Like, like it's really funny because I'm fortunate enough that now in Portland, like I am a working actor. It's my full-time job. And I'm like, it's taken a long time for me to get to the point where I can be like, yep, I'm making my money every month and living my life and doing acting full time because there's no real performances right now. Things are opening up, but not much. So I haven't been relying on dance. I haven't been able to rely on dance in the same way, or like gigging or anything like that. But it's on my mind often. So I think about it a lot. I had somebody too, I was talking with, who was I talking with? I was in this like summit for women of color stunt women and stunt coordinators like a couple of weeks ago, which was so cool to listen to. And there were a bunch of amazing ladies in there that I was just like, I'm so fangirling so hard right now. But they were like, come to Atlanta. This is like the place. And I was just like, Atlanta. Oh my God. I'm from California. So like Atlanta's a little bit of a stretch for me, but I'm like, I don't know about the South. The South seems really intense. I've been there a lot and I don't know if I could live there, but
there's no way I could live in the South.
Yeah.
No way. I don't care. The money, the career, the opportunity. No, I'll go there for a shoot, but with the understanding that I'm leaving the second the shoot is over. I'm out.
That's kind of how I feel too.
I'm out of there. The South, man. Ooh.
Yeah, it's like a little trip back in time that I'm not interested in taking.
Yeah,
for a lot of different reasons, and I'm sure you can understand.
But the mentality too. I mean, once you live in New York for 15 years and you become a New Yorker, you basically, if you're in New York for over 5 years, you're a New Yorker.
Right. Sure.
The lifestyle and the speed and the culture and all of the rules of the jungle and the city, it takes about 5 years for you to kind of get New York and for New York to get you. And once you're exposed to that kind of diversity and intelligence and sophistication and evolution and style and intellect and speed, it's really hard to function and operate in any other like culture because it's so slow and it's so backward. And mostly the mentality, you notice, like the mentality of the South is stonewalling. It's paralyzing because it's just like there's certain things that people are just stuck in, black and white, and you just are trying to no, there's a warp speed world out there, and there's this intellectual evolution that's going on. There's this diverse collaboration by default, where we don't even have to know each other or talk to each other, but we instantly know how to keep things moving, not waste each other's time, just by little tiny micro nuances to keep things flowing, keep things rolling. It's like the Lincoln Tunnel. You have 10 lanes that converge into 2 lanes that go into Lincoln, and we all seem to figure out who goes next and how it goes, and you get like 10 million cars through the Lincoln Tunnel, through morning rush hour because people don't want to waste time. You come out here and people are like bottlenecking and gridlocking at an intersection and with road rage. Like, we're trying to get to work, and you two knuckleheads are doing a Mexican standoff, on Vine and Sunset. It's like, let's go, come on, what?
God, I love it. I love it. I know it's funny how I like how you said that, like it takes 5 years for you to like get New York and New York gets into you or what it's so I love it. Cause I'm living in Boston. I know Boston's not New York, but like I'm like totally West Coast. I'm like, yeah, bro, like totally dude. Like I'm a total like that girl. I'm from San Francisco, so I can't totally claim like the Valley girl thing, but like that is kind of my thing, But I spent more time in LA, I guess, than in San Francisco because we left when I was pretty young. But being in Boston, it's just like it was funny because I was like, whoa, gear shift. Like, and then I came back to Portland and people were like, you're talking really fast right now. And I'm just like, come on, we got to do a thing. Like, what are we doing? And they're just like, whoa, buddy, I have no idea who is she because I don't know who that was, but you need to like take it down to a 4. And I was just like, I'm sorry, I have a little bit of unpacked New England baggage. Okay, can we go though? Is this a thing? Can we work with it? Like, like, oh my God. Yeah, it's super funny. Even my daughter, I was like, she's funny. We left when she was like 8 months old, and she has like a little Boston, like it creeps in a little Boston accent. And she's just like, come on, let's go. Let's get out of here. And I'm like, who are you? I love this, but what is happening? It's pretty great. But it does it like it's the way of moving in the world and the way of relating to people and like, and you having to slow that down can sometimes feel like excruciating,
Oh,
I'm just like,
it's like,
come on.
Moving out here and like the first year, it was brutal. It was painful.
Yeah.
Because you're in warp speed and you're just like, you're in that New York minute.
Yeah.
You're just like, no, chill, bro. Like we'll get to it. Maybe not. It's like, why are you tripping? Like, I'm tripping. We got like shit to do. Like,
why am I tripping? Why are you tripping? Literally, you're high. Snap out of it. Let's go.
We can get some stuff done if you wouldn't smoke so much weed. Like, come on, let's do it.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's like everybody in like Venice. You don't expect to get anything done. People out there. No offense to all my Venice friends.
Right? Exactly.
But it's true. It's true.
Well, I obviously could chop it up with you all night, but you got an early shoot, and I've got like an early shoot, and we've already been getting down for about an hour and a half. So I want to do this again.
Cool. Love to.
So you're a delight. You're fun. I've already got ideas of some projects I want to write you into, and I think we'll have a lot of fun going down a collaborative, creative rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And I totally would love to also produce a podcast for you because you have a lot to say. You got a lot of stories. You got a great voice. You got a great look. I think you should probably have your own podcast series as well. So
cool.
I want to think about what you would, talk about, what topics you would go into, the name, style, and theme of your show. Give it some thought because I am looking to acquire podcast producers for Pod Brother Nation, which is my podcast network. PNN is Pod Brother Nation Network. It's kind of a comedic spin-off of CNN, except for PNN. So
I love it. I love it.
So I would love to add you to the fray, as a podcast producer. So just give that some food for thought, and I'll let you know when this comes up. I'll send you a link to it, and you can get it out to your friends and stuff. But
awesome.
Man, it was like really fun chopping it up with you. You're
likewise.
You're very funny and charming and energetic and fun and. I can't wait to continue the story that we've started, and I'm also doing some clubhouse rooms, and I'll let you know. And I want you to come and just stop by and share some of your wisdom and talent and love. So
awesome! I would love to. I'd be honored.
Where can we find you on the web?
Everything is under my name because I had to simplify it because my name's already kind of weird. So it's easy to find. So everything, my website, Instagram, Facebook, IMDb, what else? I think those are the main things. I'm on other things, but I can't get distracted with other apps. So Instagram, Facebook, website, IMDb, all Bevin Victoria, BevinVictoria.com, Bevin Victoria /IMDb, Bevin Victoria on Insta, Bevin Victoria on Facebook.
Nice. Nice.
And that's the name that's my artist name. So if you want to look up my music on Spotify or iTunes or Bandcamp or Amazon Music or Google Play or getinmyearmusic.com or whatever other streaming sites there are in the world, it's all under Bevin Victoria, Bevin Victoria.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to push you out, and you can find me at podbrother.com. That's where I get down all things funny with the Pod Brother. There's only one, not plural. A lot of you say Pod Brothers, but there's only one Pod Brother, and that's me. You can also catch this show and other shows on podbrothernation.com. Thanks for hanging with me and Bevin. We're going to be back with some more stuff, so stay tuned and bookmark that website. And for all you sports fans,